Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and you know how excited I am. Actually, I don't think you do, because today I actually, some days I get a little extra excited to talk about these topics and subjects, and today is one of those days. I'm really excited to share something with you. Before I do, I want to just let you know that once again we had just an amazing meeting last night. As you may have remembered me saying over the last few days here, a couple of weeks even, every Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time and Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. That's Wednesday evening and Saturday morning, 7 p.m. Wednesday, 9 a.m. Saturday in the Mountain Time Zone. My friend and mindfulness partner, Adam Asdell, we give a little meeting, and we give a little kind of guided meditation along with some, kind of a talk on, in the Buddhist tradition, they're called Dharma talks, right? Just talk about how mindfulness, and for Adam, it's more about how Buddhism, impact our lives and how they show up in our lives. And so if you're free on either of these days at these times, I implore you to consider joining us. It's totally free. You don't have to be a member of anything. All you got to do is sign up on this Meetup app, and I will include the link for Saturday's talk here in the comments and or description rather. And I really hope you get to make it. We have about 15 people every time, and it's just this amazing time. There's people from all different skill levels and all different experience levels and all that. And so there's no pressure at all. You don't have to talk, but some people really do get into some amazing conversations. I really just invite you very, very warmly and openly. I invite you to join us on any Wednesday or Saturday that you would like. All right. And speaking of, these meetings, what Adam calls the Saturday sit, and I call mine the mindfulness meeting on Wednesday evening, whatever. These are part of this new podcast that Adam and I are doing. It's called Learning to Surf. It's kind of, Adam approaches this work from a very spiritual, Buddhist philosophy, whereas, me, I'm more of the science guy. I'm like Bill Nye mindfulness sort of thing. And so we talk about where these two things converge, and there's a really great overlap of these two philosophies. In fact, they're one and the same, really. And so there's very little differentiation between the two, except for terminology and sort of, a slightly different approach. But it makes for some great conversations. And we're also doing interviews, and we're posting the meeting recordings onto the, not visual, just on the podcast, just audio, so you get a meditation. Lots of good stuff. So if you're interested, go to wherever you get podcasts, search for, well, actually, I'm going to put the link below, but in case you want to do it the manual way, go to wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, which is where I record mine. I'm sure it's available on many other platforms. Search for Learning to Surf, and you'll see it's a picture of the Buddha with a little cowabunga, hang loose kind of thing going, and he is riding a surfboard. So you can't miss it, and I hope you enjoy it. So the new, the latest episode of Adam and I, which we call the Adam and Art Hour, drops today. But I believe he put an interview up there yesterday, and the meeting recording is up from last week, and the one from last night is going up today. Lots and lots of good stuff. So check that out. So I'm really excited here today because I want to talk about, I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story, which I hope you enjoy, and I hope that's welcome by you. But really what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, in the process of this personal story, I'm going to talk about something very important as it relates to happiness, right? And it's a really good news kind of situation here, right? Because the fact of the matter is that happiness is a skill set, right? It is a skill as much as playing a guitar is a skill, as much as, walking is a skill, as much as riding a bike is a skill. And just like any other skill that you've ever developed in your life, everything you've ever learned how to do, happiness can be developed through practice. And this is really good news here, folks. It's really good news. And I'm so excited to share that with you. And I'm going to tell you why it is that I have become what I like to call a happiness coach. All right. So before I get into, my own kind of motivation for this and stuff, I want to first talk about what is happiness. Just the other day, I had a little spare time in the office, and it occurred to me, since I talk about happiness all the time, we all have a sense of what happiness is, right? Like we know when we feel it, right? And we have a sense of like what the opposite of happiness is, right? Like these are not foreign concepts for most of us, right? But do we ever take the time to actually define what happiness is? And the answer to that question is mostly no, I believe. And at least that's true for me. And so yesterday, I went on my one of my favorite websites, Psychology Today, and I looked it up. And turns out there's lots of research, which I was not surprised to find. But there is research on what is happiness on a psychological, from a psychological neuroscientific level, right? Not from woo woo, not from manifesting your best self and all that kind of stuff. All that's very valid and very beautiful. And if that's your journey and that's what you're kind of into, all the power to you, and I love that. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But from here, what I'm going to talk about is a scientific basis of happiness. And I'm really excited about this because, for me, I believe in a lot of things. I really do. Like all the, I know sometimes I give a little tongue in cheek about some of the woo-woo stuff, and I certainly, preface everything that I say that has to do with woo-woo, but the fact is that I do believe most of it. I believe almost all of it on some level, because the fact of the matter is that what people believe is woo-woo is actually founded in science. As I've told you here before, back in the early 90s, the Dalai Lama, recruited or invited, probably more invited, a group of Tibetan monks to come to the U.S. and be studied in laboratories and real, functional MRIs and all kinds of, scientific method and techniques to determine the scientific basis for the practices of mindfulness and meditation that go back 2,500 years, right? And to his credit, and I always like to point this out when I tell this little anecdote, to his great credit, the Dalai Lama at the time was on record as saying that we're inviting all these we're inviting into the Buddhist kind of philosophy and understanding. We're inviting all these scientists. And if it turns out that we're wrong about the impact that these practices have on the structure of the brain and the nervous system, well, then we're going to have to rewrite some of our ancient texts. Like he came out on record as saying that before they started studying. It wasn't after the fact where it was easy. He did it beforehand. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And lucky for him, he was right, and it turns out that there is a scientific basis for all of this, and so what the Dalai Lama's motivation for this project was, well, first of all, I mean, he wanted to expose more people to this, right? Not for his own personal gain, but because he knows how valuable this kind of, when we live in, in presence with acceptance, compassion, and curiosity, he knows that equals a more satisfying life, a more happy life. Right. And so he approached people like Richard Davidson, who I talk about a lot in this podcast, one of my favorite human beings on earth, or anywhere else, I guess. He approached Richie Davidson and he said, you all have these, in Western science, you all have these amazing equipment to, and amazing technology and amazing techniques for studying pathology. You're really good at figuring out what's wrong with people's psyche, But he said, why can't we use these machines to study healthy brains, to study, the brains of people like Tibetan monks who live in utter peace and 100% happiness all the time, right? As I say, happiness for no reason, right? And so I thought that was a really beautiful way that he approached it. And again, giving him tons of credit for going out and saying, like, if this proves that the ancient texts are mistaken, then we have to rewrite them. I think that's really beautiful. So anyway, there is a scientific basis to happiness, and I'm really excited to share it with you. So, according to psychologists, there are basically three different sort of levels, or three different components to happiness. Okay, and they kind of go in ascending order, right? Like the first level of happiness is very easy to sort of quantify, right? It's very basically just the amount of, basically having more happy, positive emotions than having negative emotions, right? And that's a very simple thing, right? You can count it, right? It's like math, right? And there is something very, very valid to this, right? As I talk about here a lot, that there's, positive psychology, right, is an important thing, right? Because it is very possible for us to summon more positive, organic and natural positive emotions than negative ones. And anytime, again, according to psychology, anytime there is a balance, of positive to negative emotions, and of course, the more positive you have and the less negative you have, that is a direct, direct relationship to how happy you are, right? And that's the simple one, right? It's just like math, right? Like you're either happy more often or you're unhappy more often, and whichever one wins, that's what you are, right? So it kind of becomes like, the more often we get into those positive emotions of joy, of excitement, of love, of compassion, right? The more we get into those, and the less we get into anger and jealousy and grief and shame and all the negative emotions, that equals happiness, right? And that's a simple one. No surprises there, I'm sure, right? And so the next level of the happiness scale, if you will, according to psychologists, is the sort of subjective understanding of your life, right? And this is a little more difficult. They get more difficult to sort of, understand as you go up. The first one's very, very simple. This one's a little bit more nuanced, right? So the idea behind this sort of second, level of happiness, as in terms of psychological understanding of happiness, is the ability for you to recognize your life as something that is, that is whole, right? That you feel like you are, you are a complete person, and you feel like you are, true to your goals and true to your integrity. Right now, here's the thing about this, and this is where it comes really important, or this is a really important point in terms of understanding how happiness is a skill. Okay, because what we're not talking about here, right? We're not talking about, okay, the only people who are happy are the people who meet the goals that they set when they were 20 years old, right? Like that's exactly opposite of what we're saying, right? In fact, it's more about, being able to redefine and reset your goals as your life progresses, right? And not to feel despondent that you didn't become a rock and roll star, but instead coming to terms with the fact that you're not going to be a rock and roll star, and accepting that as okay, because it is, right? I mean, not everybody is going to be a rock and roll star no matter what, right? And not everybody has to be in order to be happy, right? And so this idea that happiness, and I talk about this a lot, how happiness comes from this, this ability to be, it comes from this place inside of us, right? It doesn't come from, like rockstar happiness. And this is something that Tony Hsieh, R.I.P. He's he actually just passed away a few months ago. He is the founder of the company Zappos, and if you really are interested in understanding, happiness, he wrote a really great book about it, right? As it pertains to retail business and stuff, but it's really fascinating. It's called Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, I believe it's not Shea like SHEA as like the Mets used to play in Shea Stadium, right? It's but anyway, you'll find it if you Google it or look him up on Amazon. Delivering Happiness. But anyway, he calls like the three levels. He calls it Rockstar Happiness, right? Which is the ability to just kind of get just have these experiences that elicit more positive experiences, more positive emotions, right? And that's that first level, right? But as I'm saying this, and I'm sorry I'm kind of veering off here a little bit, but getting back to what we're talking about, that second level of happiness, right, is not it's about kind of seeing your life in the context of of again being true to your values, right, and creating goals as per those values. Right. It also includes how connected you feel to others around you, and how much you feel connected to yourself. Right. So like so it could be summed up in to say that that second level of happiness is about feeling. Again, it's about like kind of having a groundedness in your life, right? Like a sense of stability and a sense of a good fit in the world, right? And again, this is something that is trainable, right? Because it's not so much about where you are versus where you had hoped to be at one point in your life. What it is about where you are and finding that connection and finding that truth to your integrity from where you are, right? And this again comes with realigning what that means in terms of your goals and your aspirations, right? Because again, we're not all going to be rock stars, right? And you don't have to be a rock star to be happy. In fact, the rock stars, as I just mentioned, have only that, that's really, relevant to the first layer of happiness, which is the thin one, which is very, easy to lose, right? Because at the same time that it's very possible to cultivate positive emotions, it's also very easy to fall into automatic negative emotions, right? And so that first level is very, very slippery, right? And if you're a rock star making bazillions of dollars, it's much easier to just make sure you're always having happy times, right? You have parties, you have trips, you fly around the world and all that kind of stuff. So you almost like never, you never have an opportunity to feel negative emotions, right? So it's artificial, right? And of course, it's not accessible to most of us, right? It's accessible only to a very, very small portion of society. So to base our happiness on that kind of thing is not going to be a very fruitful endeavor, right? And so that second layer is about, recognizing that you're not a rock star and being okay with that, right? Now, that doesn't mean from a sense of apathy, right? It doesn't mean to say, oh, well, I failed, I'll just give up and I'll just, skate out the rest of my life and hope for the best, right? It's actually the opposite of that. It's about realizing that, that the importance or the connection and the integrity that you can find in the little things in life. Right? In the, whatever your job is, finding a level of integrity within that, right? Which is just to say, acting with integrity, moving through your life with presence, acceptance, compassion, curiosity, right? That is a basis for your happiness. Right? So those are the first two levels. Now, the third level is, again, much harder to, even harder to sort of define, but the best thing that I came up with in all of the different articles that I read on Psychology Today and other places, I just did a whole lot of reading the other day. It's about having a sense of purpose, right? It's about having this notion, this feeling that when I get up in the morning and I do something, that or that there's something in my life that I'm doing that matters on a level that's bigger than myself, right? And so, now again, it's not about, it's the complete opposite of what it might sound, right? Because when we say that, we might say something like, well, I work at a grocery store, so I don't have any purpose there, so I guess I'll never be happy, right? I don't want you to think that way because it's completely the opposite of that. There's two things involved, right? Number one is we can always find some level of purpose in whatever we're doing. There's a great story about John F. Kennedy touring the Cape Canaveral Space Center, years before the trip to the moon, obviously, and when they were first getting the thing started, right? And he was touring the facility, and at one point he's in a room talking to a group of people, and the janitor walks through the room, right? And Kennedy, to his great credit, I mean, he's really good at this kind of thing, of course. He stopped, he went over to the janitor, he put out his hand, he says, "Hey, I'm Jack Kennedy. What's your name and what do you do here?" And the guy said, I don't remember what his name was, but he says, "My name is Mike Jones." And, what he didn't say, well, I'm just the janitor. I just clean up. I just sweep the floors. I take out the garbage. You don't want to talk to me. He didn't say any of that, right? That would be the voice of an unhappy person. What he said was, "My name is Mike Johnson, and I am helping to put a man on the moon." Right? So even working as a janitor, not to say that working as a janitor, there's nothing wrong with working as a janitor. That can be a very fulfilling position in your life, right? It doesn't have to be seen as something that is a default, right? Like you failed at everything else, so now you're this, right? It's not the case, right? Even though that's the way we tend to think about things like careers, right? But even as something as simple as being as being responsible for cleaning a facility like that, it's very, very true to say that person was very much part of the process that put someone on the moon. Almost as much as the people who figured out the science behind it and built the machines, right? Because if there wasn't somebody doing what Mike Johnson, or whatever the gentleman's name was, if there wasn't somebody doing that, then the whole thing couldn't have happened, right? And that right there is the way to become happy, is to find a way in which your participation and your contribution to this life, to this world, means something. And it means something more than just, getting paid and buying, paying your rent and going out and, be able to take your family to Chipotle on Friday night or something like that. Right. And so again, that's part of the skill. Right. But the other thing, the other way in which we can cultivate this sense of purpose, right, is that, let's say you're having a hard time finding that thing in your job. And if you are, I invite you to call me, because I can help you. That's part of what being a coach is helping people to find these things, right? And so if you're having trouble with that, I can certainly help you, and I'd be more than happy to. We could just do a free call for 45 minutes. You go on my website and book that, and within 45 minutes, I can get you to connect to some level of purpose in your job, right? But let's say that's not enough for whatever reason. Right? Now we can think about all the other ways in which we all are able and often do practice things or contribute to the world in which are bigger than us, right? So being a parent is an automatic one, right? Like if you're a parent, you're automatically responsible for something that's not just you, right? You're responsible, in fact, for 7 generations behind you, right? That your work is impacting 100 years worth of people, right? More than 100 years worth of people, I guess, actually 140 or something like that, right? Or there's also the concept of volunteering. Right? Like if you're not a parent and you work in a place where you don't feel like, maybe you work for a law firm or something like that, and you can't find yourself, you can't get in touch with that awesome purpose of your life, and you were not able to book a call with Art, and you didn't want to talk to Art for whatever reason. I don't know why, but let's say that's the case. Well, now you can go out and you can volunteer. Right? You can give yourself, 1 or 2 hours a week of working at the local cat shelter, or the local sanctuary farm, or the local, homeless, the food, soup kitchen kind of thing, right? Like you have that ability to go out and do something that puts you in touch with something that is bigger than yourself. Right? So why am I a happiness coach, right? Why do I do this, right? Well, for one thing, I know what it's like to be unhappy. I know what it's like to have the opposite of all these 3 things. And in fact, I know that many people know what that's like. And I know how how difficult life can be when we live in this place of unhappiness, right? And when we're not doing things to encourage and to develop our happiness, right? Because like many of you, I'm sure, I grew up thinking like, there's some people who are happy and there's some people who aren't happy, and deal with it, and I happen to be one of those people who's not happy, right? But if I knew then what I know now, I would have kicked myself in the butt a long time ago to become happy, because you know what? Life is better when we're happy. It's simply more enjoyable. It simply contains less suffering. It contains less damage. It contains less drama. It contains less everything that you don't want. And it contains more love. It contains more life satisfaction. It contains more, feeling of purpose, feeling of where I fit in the world. It contains more of all of that, right? And so I know how hard it is to live with unhappiness, but I also know, even before I looked it up the other day, I know that these are all things that you can develop. You can train these things, just like going to the gym and working out, just like taking guitar lessons or piano lessons or drum lessons, just like learning to ride a bike, just like learning a new language. You can do any of these things, right? With the right teacher, the right commitment to the process, and putting the time in, you can do any of those things. It does not require some special skill. It does not require some innate talent. You can develop that skill through practice. And happiness is no different. So what happens when people, if somebody wants to learn how to play the guitar, right? What's the best thing you can do? The best thing you can do is to go find a good teacher to teach you how to play guitar, right? You can do it on YouTube. You can do it by buying books. You can do it by just sitting with the guitar and figuring it out, right? Eventually you'll get there. It's going to take much more time on your part. It's going to take much more commitment on your part. You're going to be, you're very much susceptible to distraction, to procrastination, to giving up on it, right? All of that, right? Because what a teacher does, a teacher not only shows you what you need to know, but a teacher can also tailor that information to you, right? Like, okay, so what kind of music do you want to play? Because, you don't have to necessarily learn how to do this thing if you want to play this kind of music, right? The right teacher can say, okay, these are the basics you definitely need to know, but you don't need to know these other things. We can just go right to this way that you want to play, which is going to be more exciting for you, right? And so that's something that I do with the people I work with, is I get to, tailor these practices. Not everybody has to go step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some people, step 1, step 2, step 3 are always going to be, the basis. So that's important. But after that, we can customize. And we can customize based on what's your desire and what's going to make it interesting for you. Pardon me. The other thing that a coach or a teacher provides is accountability, right? Because if you start working out in your 30s, right, you spend 30 years not working out. If you start to try to be happy in your 30s, you'd spend 30 years not being happy. I don't care who you are, it's really hard to change something after so much time has been spent, doing something a certain way, right? So even something like playing guitar, you spend 30 years not playing guitar. So you're changing something. You're changing something very significant and very complex, right? Because there's so many different layers of what is blocking you from the things that create the conditions for happiness, as I just explained, and so that's why having a teacher is something that's really, really helpful, right? Because the teacher, just like going to the gym, right? If somebody's starting to work out for the first time and they're 30 years old, the best thing that person can do for themselves is to hire a personal trainer, right? You don't need the personal trainer forever. Just like you don't need a teacher forever. You don't need a math teacher forever, right? You study math for a number of years. You get the knowledge, you get the experience, you get the skill, and then you move on, right? And so that's what I do. And that's, and honestly, my sense of purpose is tied to this thing that I do, right? And I said this just yesterday, like, this is why I get out of bed in the morning, because I know that, when I hear from my clients and I hear from people on this YouTube channel and this podcast, and I get emails from people and I see how much this work is helping. And of course it's much stronger with my clients because, again, with my clients, we're able to really dial in the way that we do this stuff so that it can really impact their lives the way that they want it, right? So if you're a parent and you're trying to work on connecting to your children, I can do practices that are really focused to that, right? If you're somebody who just has an anger issue, that you're just all over the place, you're just, having trouble with anger, whether it affects parenting or any other part of your life, we can focus on that. And that's the point, right? And that's the value of somebody, so again, getting back to what I was saying. So when I see the benefits, like when I see my clients who are parenting in a way that is just magical and beautiful with their children, that gives me that sense of purpose. Right. And it also gives me the second part, which is this sense that I'm on the right track. I'm in the right place. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Do I sometimes have doubts and concerns about where I'm at in my life? Yes, of course I do. And then the first layer, I have more happy emotions because of the work that I do, right? Like I'm spending all day talking to people who are improving their lives, and that makes me happy. It gives me feelings of joy and excitement, right? And of course, it doesn't mean that I don't feel negative emotions. I told you a story just the other day. I had an angry moment that I really felt a very strong level of anger. But beneath that anger, there's like the depth of an ocean of happiness that's there for me that I can always tap into. Right. And so what I'm describing here, right, is not, I know I'm like saying, yeah, me, how awesome is my life? And it's not about that, right? My life has its challenges. Trust me, it really, really does. But this brings me back to something that one of my favorite quotes from Ram Dass that I actually have on my phone here that, you can't really read it here, but basically it says that I help people to work as a way to work on myself, and I work on myself as a way to help others. This, Ram Dass says, is what the emerging game is all about. And so that's what I'm telling you too, right? By working on yourself, by going and doing some volunteering, by getting in touch with your sense of belonging in your life and your sense of being on track with who you want to be and in touch with your integrity, right? That's working on yourself too, right? Feeling more positive emotions than negative emotions, that is also working on yourself. But when you do that and you achieve this skill of happiness, well, then you're going to impact those around you in a really beautiful way. And then that's going to come back to you and it's going to feel good. And it's going to, contribute to that skill of happiness and well-being. Whew. Again, if you want to talk more about this, I am here for you. Okay. I could talk about this forever. And if you have any questions, or if you would like to, if you want help finding your sense of purpose or your sense of, higher than you kind of happiness with your work, I'd be more than happy to go through an exercise and do that with you. Okay. So the only thing you got to do is go to my website, artburnscoaching.com. At the bottom of every page, there's a banner that has a big clock in it. Okay. My wife designed it. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Click the button in there. It says something like schedule a free call. Just click it. You'll go into my calendar program, find a day that works for you. You click on the day, a bunch of times open up. those times that I'm not scheduled already. Find a day and a time that works for you. Click on it. Now it's yours. Okay. And from that moment, then you got to put in your email address and your name and stuff like that. But after that, your work is done. Now you just sit and wait until I get in touch with you. I'll send you an email within 24 hours of booking the call. And then I'll send you a reminder before the call. And then we'll be on the call for about 45 minutes and we can work on this together. And I'd be more than happy to do that. And it will not cost you a penny. Okay. That first session is something I cover the cost on. And I'm happy to do that because the benefit, again, that we get out of that you get and I get, are really beautiful. So this is your happiness coach, Art Burns, signing off for today, and thanking you for being here, and telling you that I'm really looking forward to being here again tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Wishing you well.